Have you ever hit a moment where success wasn't enough? Where the weight of your past, the scars no one sees, or the doubts you don't dare to voice keep you from breaking through to the life you know you're capable? Maybe you've achieved things others only dream of. Maybe deep down, there's still something holding you back, something you can't quite name, yet it's there, shadowing your every step forward. If that strikes you at a chord, take a breath. You have just found your people. You're not alone. Welcome to That Shit Does Not Define You, Stories of Hope. I'm Athena Captain, joined by my co-host, Jada Haycraft, and this isn't just another podcast. This is a space to strip away labels, shame, and the invisible barriers that have held you back.
With each podcast, we will bring you raw, unfiltered stories of resilience, real people who have defied the odds to rewrite their narratives and give you the strategies, systems, and tools to do the same. This isn't theory, it's lived experience. It's practical, it's powerful, and it's personal. Whether you're ready to claw your way out of rock bottom or shatter the invisible ceiling standing between you and your highest potential, this podcast is your roadmap to rise. Your next breakthrough starts here. Let's get started. It's time to rewrite your narrative.
I am so excited that you guys are here today, listeners. What if the pain of your past is still writing the story of your present? I know some of you understand what I'm talking about. That childhood you didn't choose, right? The trauma you didn't deserve is still holding that pin of your story in your life. Today, we're going to dive into the truth most people avoid. The past can shape us, but it doesn't have to control us. My guest today has lived this life, and we're here to show you how to take back your power and reclaim your life. I can't wait for you to hear her. You're going to want to take notes, like and subscribe, save this. It's going to be powerful and it could change your life. And that's what we want it to do, right, Jada?
Absolutely. And we cannot wait to welcome Stacy McNeilland today. We're so excited to have her. She has over 25 years of experience in the nonprofit and higher education sectors. Stacy is a seasoned executive who leads with creativity, strategy, and values. She currently serves as the CEO and founder of Roar at the Care Center, a nonprofit agency that we'll learn a lot more about, but it provides child abuse response and evaluation services in Oklahoma City. Stacy is also the author of Rex Finds His Roar, a prevention education book for children and caregivers. So we cannot wait to embark on this journey with you today. Welcome, Stacy.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here.
We're happy to have you.
I'm so fortunate, Jada, because a lot of the people we have on are people I know personally. So I'm very excited. Stacy, you and I have met, oh my gosh, in the last 10 years. Some friends of ours introduced me to your to the Care Center because of my childhood trauma. And they're like, hey, you've got to know about this program. It's one of the best child focused for abuse programs we have in Oklahoma. And I love your mission. So thank you so much for being here. And I know I tease you sometimes about this, but I do think we could be sisters in another life. But so please don't hold that against her. It's just, she's an amazing woman and somebody I respect greatly. But Stacy, as we get started in these questions, tell just, we're going to dial down, but just overview, who are you? And tell the audience, who are we talking to today?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. This is what I love to do. It wasn't always like this. The fact that I'm a pretty open book. Even thought about opening a page at even 25 years ago would have never, ever happened. You would really see a facade before anything else. Mm-hmm. But who I am at the core of me is I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I am his 100%. I know that I'm not in control. And even though I fight against that almost every day.
Amen.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
He's my savior. And I try to focus on him with everything that I am. But I'm also a daughter and a girlfriend. And a big part of me is I am a survivor. I'm a survivor of shocking and heinous childhood sexual abuse That's not a scary thing for me to say anymore because I've survived it. And honestly, it has really allowed me to be the best possible me that I ever could because of what I've overcame. Um, it's a weird thing now. People are like, oh, I wish I could take that away from you. I'm like, no, this is me. Uh, uh, I have an amazing life. And 2 miniature dachshunds running around and an awesome boyfriend. And we're just having a great time.
I love it. I love it. All right. So I want to get into the questions here. Your work focuses on helping abused children at the care center. How did your own experience with childhood trauma shape your decision to step into that role?
Yeah. Well, you know what? At first it didn't. Like at first it was very systematic, meaning that I was in higher education for almost 20 years and loved it. Never thought that I would ever leave. I loved serving college students from an administration and like a professor capacity. And honestly, at that time, even with my childhood background, I had never heard of the care center, but I was approached um, by someone and they said, you would be good at this. You should look into this. And I thought, oh, thank you. But there was something, it's God for me, knocking at like this internal door saying, hey, you need to look at this. But so at first, when I took the job, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. Yes, I have a past in it. But the more that I worked here, the more I was like, oh God, like this, you really are here for a reason. And it's not just to help, it's to become the person that my God wants for me to be, for him to let me see the real me and embrace it and embrace it completely without being scared. So first it didn't, and then it really revealed itself to me, allowing me to be my best self.
You know, I do have a secondary question. Do you think because of your experience that you have more empathy, sympathy, and or connection with the people and the families that you're serving?
100%.
Yeah.
It's almost odd. And now I've been in my position almost 12 years. I almost wish that I would have like kept this little record book, because the number of kids that have said to me in so uncertain terms, you've been hurt before too, I can tell, or you understand, right? I don't know what it is. I don't know if I think I do. I think that after all these years, what it is that I don't handle them with kitten gloves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's up? I know this stinks today, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. What could make you feel better right now? How can I help you? Right this second. And if they're, I mean, it's just I don't act like they're broken, because we aren't broken. We're going through a difficult time, but we didn't cause this to happen.
No.
So it's about
Right.
It's about facing them with the same bravery that I know that they have inside them, even if they feel that. So,
yeah.
But
wow,
yeah,
I love that.
I think families and kids, they get it. They can see my response. They can see how I treat them. And it has equated in the past for kids even saying, you understand, you know what I'm going through, right? Or I can talk to you, and I haven't been able to talk to other people. And I think it's because I'm not, oh, I'm sorry you're here. I don't treat them any differently than anybody else.
Wow. I love that. As a person who has dealt with trauma, I do not appreciate, when I was younger, very young, I did not appreciate people I was no longer a child, even though I was a child. Right. And so I didn't appreciate being treated like a child when I was dealing with an adult thing. It made me angry. So I really love that you are being that for the kids.
Yeah.
For people who are carrying trauma from childhood, it's easy to feel like their past still controls them, right? I mean, There's science behind that. But what would you say to someone who feels trapped by their story?
Okay, this is going to sound super corny, but the truth will set you free.
Hmm.
And let's unpack that a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, please.
That seems like real cliche. And yeah, of course, what you would hear in a movie. But every single individual, you really, really do know what the truth is. It's what if you're willing to face it and embrace it and dig out of it. I always knew the truth. I always knew what I really felt about myself,
Mm-hmm.
how I hid, the excuses that I made, that I just wasn't facing that truth. But it is a journey. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I coupled my journey with a lot of bad behaviors. I had a really hot temper, or I would just keep myself close, but not close enough to people. I would do all kinds of things to just avoid being real with myself, or inflate stories like this is who I am, or I can do all of this when I knew I couldn't. Why are you being a poser?
Right.
Just be who you are. And I had to get real with that. And for me, counseling was a lifesaver for me.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, my counselor is still just like, she's retired, but a very important, pivotal person in my life. And she would always say, what are you so afraid of? What is the worst thing that would happen if you did X?
Mm-hmm.
And to be very specific, I just want to fast forward. And for me, one of those things meant going outside without my makeup on. I know that seems trivial, but it can be just something small. I very much was wrapped up into this is who I am, and I'm together, and I'm this person.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go outside without that, people are going to see the real me. And it had nothing to do with that. And she would ask me, if you went to Lowe's without makeup, what's the worst thing that would happen? And so I had to start practicing
Mm-hmm.
that. I would go outside and I would go to Sonic, and then I would, push it up. I would try different things. And I think for me to tell people, journal it, write down, I'm scared to do this. I hold back in this situation because of this. I didn't tell the truth here because of this.
Right.
I hurt myself by drinking because I feel this. Start to identify those emotions and unpack them.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that there's a system there. It seems like it's unattainable.
Mm-hmm.
There can be a prescription for every person on how to overcome trauma. We don't have to make it this good luck. I don't know what worked for me won't work for you. It doesn't have to be that hard, even though when you're in the middle of it, I don't want to seem like it's not a big deal, because it feels impossible. So
I love what you said about acknowledging it. I did a great job in high school at not letting, because I moved away. So at 14, I ran away and moved away from everything I knew to get away from the abuse. And so I was in California and with a father I hadn't seen for years, and a new school, new whatever, right? So I took it as an opportunity, Stacy, to redefine, right? The people there, right, all knew me as a poor, abused kid. And so I was like, oh, these people won't know. And I'm going to make sure, Jada and Stacy, I was like, they will never know. So I was, I was voted most likely to succeed. I, played tennis. I was won national speech contest. I put it on, right? I was like, no one will know. And what happened is, and they didn't. I did a really good job at faking it. But what happened is then I got a scholarship to go to college, and I couldn't keep the facade. Do you know what I mean? And so I finally was on my own, no longer, because I went from huge abuse to dysfunction, highly dysfunctional. Matter of fact, I went to what most people would call abuse, but for me, one is, there's just levels. And But when I got out of the highly dysfunction and the abuse and I was on my own, I had a nervous breakdown. It didn't even take 8 months before I had a complete nervous breakdown. I call it my great fog because I no longer could pretend. And that great fog cost me, college. It cost me a lot. And in that great fog, I made life decisions that greatly impacted the rest of my life that I am sad about. But to your point, acknowledging it, not faking it. Had I maybe not done such a good job of creating this, I made the breakdown maybe would have been different. I don't know. I just, to your point, I really want to encourage people. The hiding from it catches up to you, and it's destructive, and um it will actually hurt you more than dealing with it, for sure.
To couple that is
Yeah.
with people that you love.
Yes.
I think maybe this is a singular decision. So for me, it just happened later for me. I kept the facade, kept it all the way through college, kept the facade, got the first job around 26, 27. That was it. I couldn't do it anymore. I had all of these physical problems, like
Mhm.
trauma. We're
Yeah.
going to talk about that affects more than just your mind. It affects, I had high blood pressure, OCD. I was severely obese. I had panic disorder. I had all of these things. And looking at it from outside, no one really understood why these things were happening because I just
Mhm.
wasn't being honest with myself. I
Yeah.
wasn't letting anybody see anything. And people would ask, has something happened to you? What's going on? And no, I'm good. I'm good. And it wasn't until really tragedy kind of struck. And I hurt myself in a way that was really, you couldn't ignore it.
Mhm.
And it forced me to get the severe help that I really needed. And it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me because
Yeah.
it started that journey of truth seeking.
Mhm.
Yeah. So my encouragement is that we all have people that we love in our lives, and the last thing you would want to do is hurt them.
Mhm.
It does when you're
Yeah.
not your true self, when you are unwilling to face your demons or your issues. You aren't giving your best self to the people that you love so much.
Amen to that. And and to further go into that, you and I both know that science shows that childhood trauma affects people physically in their body, their mind. How do you see this play out in the lives of the children you help, or even in the adults that you that haven't healed yet? To go deeper into what you're talking about, and I know there's a good book. Jada put this as a resource, but "The Body Keeps the Score." Great read on this. By the way, I will tell people it's very scientific. So, but
You
what would
know,
you say? I mean, how have you seen this play out?
you know, this happens. We see kids as young as 3 walk through our doors, and we do assessments on them. We do assessments on their parents, and we learn um, about their past. I would say to anyone listening, if you are not familiar with the ACE study, an ACE score, it's adverse childhood experiences. I would encourage you to learn about that, but learn about it in a place where you feel safe and someone can walk you through it. If you, just gonna tell you, if you get online and Google ACE study, 10 questions are going to pop up and you can take it pretty quickly. And then you're going to be left with a number and you're going to be like, okay, so based on this, I'm a 5 or a 6 or a 7 or an 8. And that says I'm really messed up. What? And luckily for me, the ACE study wasn't revealed to me until I was in really intensive therapy. But it was a transitional moment for me that when I realized I had an 8 out of 10 on the ACE study, for the very first time, I knew I didn't do this. I am not this score. This is what someone did to me. I didn't cause this. I didn't do this. And I finally was able to like separate self from my past and realize I'm not going to allow this to have ownership of me. Now, easier said than done. I still work on this all the
Yeah.
time. I really do.
Yeah.
But the children that we see and the parents that we see that come in that have generational trauma, kids that walk in that have had the unimaginable happen. Um, the great thing about what we do at the care center is that we're stopping things right here. That kids have the opportunity, if they do walk in our doors at 3, and let's say they're a 6 on the ACE study, we're going to address that trauma and we're going to try to break that down and have them acknowledge their truth, tell the truth, tell their story to someone trusted, and get the help that they need to heal. And a lot of times we're doing it alongside their families, their caregivers, that they need trauma counseling too. They have no idea the way they are, and they need help as well. Back, Athena, when we were growing up, there wasn't a place like the care center. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
There were no child advocacy centers.
No.
So things come full circle, and I'm so glad that we're able to offer those, services to kids at any age when they come.
I've had the privilege of touring your facility and seeing what you guys do. One of my favorite things that you guys do there is your interview process and how you stop additional trauma by how you interview a child and multiple agencies get to listen in so you don't perpetuate the trauma. I love that. And it was something that really was near and dear to my heart. And that you acknowledge and listen, right? That you actually say, hey, yeah, it really happened to you. I remember, I may have never said this publicly, but one of the worst beatings I ever got, was when first time I had told an adult what was happening to me at home. And I don't know, some authority showed up to our house, and my mom, who is a very good manipulator, made them very convinced that I was just seeking attention. And they left. And I wasn't even 10 yet. And I remember at that moment, I knew I'm on my own. I can never trust an adult. No one will protect me. And I have to keep my mouth shut because it will only get worse. And I did. And I kept my mouth shut until I was almost 15. And so the care center, a place that I could have gone and said, hey, this is real. And somebody would have said, hey, I hear you. Such a huge impact. I love that. And I just want to encourage people. Stacy, there's people listening to this all over the United States. Tell me that there are other places like the Care Center throughout the United States or similar.
There are over 1,000 child advocacy centers throughout the United States. So pretty much wherever you're at in the United States, you could get on Google. If you're in Minneapolis, if you're in Boston, type in child advocacy center and it's going to pop up. And if you have suspicion of abuse, if you need help, if you have a child and you want prevention, training, pretty much they can be a local resource for you in addressing abuse if you see or know what's happening, or you have someone disclose to you, and getting those prevention services you need.
Yeah. And I hope people take advantage of them. I really, if you're, if anyone's listening to this, and, I would say this too. If you are somebody, even in your 20s or 30s, and you're going through abuse, call one of those places because they know other places. So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I'm not a child, call those places. They know other places. So, you really need to know you don't ever have to feel alone. But, Stacy, to keep going a little bit deeper in your story, because obviously it's very emotional, but you've overcome a great deal. But healing from childhood trauma isn't linear, right? Could you share a moment when you when you have felt controlled by your past, and how do you move through it? I know I do. It's not a, people are like, "Oh, are you healed?" And I'm like, "I'm healing." But
Always.
do you ever feel like, okay, my past has come back, it's trying to get me, and how do you move through that?
Well, when preparing for this, I could have gone one or different
Yeah.
directions. I'm leaning really far in and going to talk about something that is very recent within the
Okay.
last 3
Yeah.
years that really derailed me. And I fell back into a lot of old behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
I have some shame about it, but what I know at this point in my life is own it,
Yeah.
talk about it, get it out there.
Amen.
It won't own you.
Amen.
Darkness hides in darkness. There
Yeah.
are secrets that hide in the dark that can't be set free.
Right.
So talk about them. So
Yeah.
specifically for me, a while back, I was not in a good relationship. It was a bad relationship, love relationship. And I started creating this narrative that you're in your mid 50s. You've never been married. This is as good as it's going to get. And so this person who isn't healthy for you doesn't match your values necessarily, but he's there and you guys can run errands together and he's going to pick you up off the floor if you get sick, but you're not happy.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, I was like, okay, I mean, maybe this is just the way it is. Maybe this is as good as it's going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I had convinced myself that that's what I deserved.
Mm. Yeah.
There came a point in time that I was like, what in the hell are you doing? You know you deserve better. You don't have to be here again. You've got to fight for yourself. And it was the hardest thing that I've ever done, was to have finally a relationship that I had pretty much promoted that was love of my life, all of these things, and it wasn't. And I had to get real with myself and cancel weddings and important dates and tell all my friends and family this wasn't good. I got out. I learned a lesson and I'm going to keep growing. So yeah, I think I fell back into those old traps, those old behaviors, because they're always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you choose to address them.
Wow. Can I ask you, first of all, thank you. I know that's very personal. I appreciate you sharing that, because the thing I really want the listeners to hear, people like Stacy, Jada, and I who've done the therapy and we've done the work, we still have to do this too. Like, we're always watching our six to make sure that the behavior that the trauma created stays in its place. I mean, right? So that it doesn't control us. But what was it? I really want people to hear, what was it that finally woke you up to say, I am worth more than this? Was there one thing or a prayer? What made you say, dang it, I'm worth it?
It was one, it was building.
Mm-hmm.
There were nights I would turn over and cry myself to sleep, but very quietly, because I didn't want to bother anybody. But there was one moment, that this person came home and had quit their job. And without talking to me, without realizing how it would affect us, essentially, he just was done and was like, whatever. And I was like, how are you going to pay your bills? How are we going to survive? Like, we're in this together, and that you made that decision.
Yeah.
And I realized I'm looking for a partner. I'm looking for a life partner that doesn't have an expectation that I'm going to save them or make their lunch or pay their bills. And how did you even get here?
Right.
And that was it. That was
Yeah.
it. That was the beginning of the end. And
Mhm.
it did take at least 4, because, there was like, don't I get another chance? Let me but mm-mm.
Yeah.
that was it. It was
Yeah.
it. I realized we're never going to be the same. We're never going to value the same things. We're never
Mhm.
going to want the same things. You're never going to value me enough, respect me enough as a human being. And
Mhm.
I was out.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you for standing up for yourself. I think it's very difficult for us that have lived through trauma, especially those of us who had to learn to keep the trauma quiet. That is very difficult for us to stand up for ourselves because we were hardwired for secrecy. Um,
You get in a pattern, Athena,
yeah.
that my whole young life, I received attention because I perfected this image. I was
Yeah.
I had perfect grades. I was the high school, dancer and performer. I got all these awards, and I did that all through college.
Yep.
And it was painstaking. I mean, it was a lot
Yeah.
to not ever break down. So my tendency, even in business now or in relationships now, is to kind of want to be in that box and to be perfect, or whatever my image of that is. So I have to really push against that really when people and even in job, when they are most appealed to me, not really the right word, but when they bond with me the most is when I'm being my most authentic self. I
Yeah.
am being my most authentic self right now. Some of that comes along with guilt, shame, a little bit of embarrassment. This is it. This is real. And this is how you get comfortable in your skin. And that's what I want to encourage people, that you're never going to tell somebody something that they won't still love you. And if they stop loving you or being in your life because of that, you don't need them.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you
I love that being authentic. The next question I have, you've already teed it up. So I just, a
okay.
lot of people, you just talked about wanting to put the perfect persona on, right? And I call them it's our masks. We're putting on masks so you don't really see. And those masks look different for different people. Like for you, it's, I don't even want to wear the makeup out. For me, I was a workaholic for years. I would like to say that I'm a recovering workaholic. I love work, but I'm not a workaholic. I used to work 15, 18-hour days, and love it. And or there are other masks that people put on, right? Perfect mom, which doesn't exist, or whatever, right? And what, if you're talking to people, what are some of the signs that people can recognize in themselves that, hey, I'm putting on this facade, whatever that facade looks like, to not be my authentic self, to not be vulnerable? And what advice would you have them to get away from the filter?
I still struggle with, for me,
Mm-hmm.
my upbringing, I was recognized, I was applauded, I received good attention
Yeah.
for the good things that I did. So I continued that kind of through my work. I mean, the more I accomplish, the higher the role, the higher the salary, the better I am. And that's great and all, but it doesn't mean you're a good person. It doesn't mean you love yourself, because I haven't a lot of years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you see this in yourself, when you see this in others, it means they never break down. It means they never take a day off for themselves. It means they always put other people before you. It looks like someone who just never has an off switch. You have to have an off switch. And I was a workaholic because I didn't want to look at myself.
Amen.
I started
Amen.
doing this in the
Yep.
work because that was easier than saying, you don't like yourself, and why? And don't you want to get to the bottom of that? I would say, I chose to be single for almost 20 years, from 30 to really my 50s. I did not date. I didn't And I said, I'm too focused on my career. I want to achieve these things. I want to be in this role. But really it was, I was hiding. I didn't love myself. I was too scared for somebody to really see who I really was. Some really impactful things have happened to me during my career, specifically at the care center, that have been pivotal in me loving myself and
Wow.
becoming who I was. And one of those was having a close enough relationship with my leadership team here at the care center. There's 7 of us all together. At the time, 6 of those individuals were reporting to me, but we trusted each other enough that we could keep it real. And some things happened at work. It was kind of like a toxic little environment. And that leadership team said, this is what you do, and we hate it. When you work at 7 o'clock and you send us emails, we hate it because you're our boss and we feel that we have to respond. And so there were several things like that it was a gut punch because I love these people and I didn't want to be that person. And I didn't even recognize it it was having that negative effect on them. But it took their brutal honesty for me to go, okay, hold on. Then I need to change behaviors. I need to change myself. It's not somebody else's problem. This is me. And I want them to stay. I want them to be good, great. So I have to stop what I'm doing. And then it took another big experience that was much more public, that I nearly had like this little mini breakdown. It kind of shattered this image that I felt like I had. And I had to lean into, you either are going to spiral out and you're going to lose this job because you won't really peel back the layers, or you're going to lean in and you're going to get help. And I did. I got a coach. I got personalized coaching that ripped back layers that were painful to look at. While I've always been a high achieving leader, was I a leader with empathy? Was I a leader that put people over achievement? I don't know that I've always been able to say that. I'm proud of what I've accomplished, but honestly, today I can wholeheartedly tell you that people are more important than any goal, than any achievement, than any money amount raised, because it is what matters. That people, relationship, this is what matters. It's not everything else. And I'm really glad that those things happened now. It was so hard. I went through some dark times and feeling really crappy about myself and having to unlearn behaviors and unlearn how to close it down. And even if my mind was still going, how to not put that on other people. I am that. If you follow Enneagram, I am a classic 3. It's always on. I'm always cooking.
I don't know them, so I don't know what I am.
I'm right there with you, Stacy. I am a 3 to a T.
Yeah, I don't even know what I would be, so I have no idea.
Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to send you a test and you're a 3.
What's a 3? You got to share. What's a 3 since I'm a 3?
Workaholic, hides their emotions, fears connectivity. I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, and it's creepy. I follow Enneagram stuff now, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. But it gives you tips. It's like, how do you relate to a 5? There's 9 Enneagrams, and it says, how should you relate to an 8? Because we're all very different. And it's really helped me in work. It's helped my employees know, okay, she's a 3, so don't go in there complaining about a lot of issues and not have at least one problem solved.
Yeah, for sure. I always say you don't have a problem if you don't have a solution.
Yeah, like why are you here? Haven't you brainstormed before you got in?
Exactly.
Don't waste my time. Be on time. There's just certain things that they know about me and how to approach me, and it's really helped our work culture here.
I love. I just have to tell you, because I'm currently going through a difficult season, and one of the things that I'm struggling with is that being what you just said, being authentic, because it is so personal and so difficult. And you know, in this season, I am fighting wanting to put on that persona of everything is okay. I am forcing myself by baby steps. Like when you came on today and you're like, are you okay? I am just letting people know just enough that I'm not okay, but I'm not really telling people how, you know what I mean? Because I'm so hardwired to not really show them, right? And mainly, I'll just be frank, because I feel like if I told people how complicated and difficult it really was, that they'd no longer hire me, no longer believe in me, and think I should just go home and crawl into bed, because that's what most people would do. But I have some resiliency, and I have some faith, and I have some ability. So, just going back to what you're saying, I hear you, and I am fighting it right now, saying you don't get to put on the happy face. You have to be authentic. You've got to tell people that without airing all the dirty laundry. You know what I mean?
It's just, I'm lucky to have a leadership team here at the Care Center that has stuck with me, that believes in me, that accepts my weaknesses, that will call me out. And they're like, we like it when you aren't all this. We
put together.
We like it when you will say, I'm having a terrible day and I've been crying all morning. Because that is not how I want to walk into work. How I feel like I should walk into work is, good morning. How's everybody doing? We're ready to tackle the day. But that's not authentic. We don't always feel like that. It's okay to be like, oof, I'm struggling to even be here today. Like, I've got a lot on my mind. We want that from other people, especially these perfectionist kind of individuals like we are. So when people are that to us, we're like, come and talk to me. And we listen and we're empathetic, but we don't flip over and do the same for them. They want that for us too. And the more my team here continues to remind me, the more you are yourself, the more you are real, exactly real. The better you are as a leader. One time in a staff meeting, I got really irritated because people weren't showing up on time. And this is how I dealt with it. And this is embarrassing. I said, I have my book and I go, you know what? I don't think we're going to have this meeting today. I guess I'll get back with you. And I closed my notebook and I walked out.
I would so do that. I would so do that.
The next time I ended up, this is a kind of a little raging regret thing. This has been a thing for me in my life that I would write, and then I'd be like, oh God, what did you do? You're an ass. You were that, come on. And so the next time I felt anger and upsetness in a staff meeting, I said, hold on, guys. I was like, it's upsetting me because no one's listening. And I feel pointless up here. Can you guys have my back? And everyone was like, sorry, man. Yes, of course. Yeah. You're important. What were you saying? And immediately it was squashed. And I was like, that's so much easier than having to type out an email about how embarrassed I am. And I'm so sorry that I raged out on you. And I was like, this is easier. So just lean into those uncomfortable moments and don't be afraid to show people who you really are. Because I promise you 95% of the time, you're going to get back what you give to other people, which is graciousness and empathy and love. You will get it back. You can't be afraid.
That's great. And it helps you heal.
Yeah.
Right? It will help you heal. Which, by the way, we've talked about that child trauma affects us. It becomes part of the biology. It becomes part of our patterns of belief and actions. What steps can someone take? Maybe you guys teach this at the Care Center. Take today to stop the cycle. and start healing themselves and their future generations? I know you deal with lots of generational impact of trauma. What advice would you give them?
First and foremost, it doesn't matter really who it is, but you gotta have to be real with somebody.
Mm.
A personal journey is important. I think journaling, that type of thing, there's value in it. But at some point, you're going to have to set your truth free with another human, because human connection really solves. And so one of the pillars of who we are at the Care Center is therapy. Immediate crisis counseling, long-term counseling, short-term counseling, a lot of modalities. I talk to a lot of adults, and they're like, I don't have time for ongoing talk therapy. And so I'm like, have you ever done eye movement EDMR? Have you ever done that? And they're like, no, what's that? And I'm like, it can be very effective and almost immediate. And so it's about leaning in and trusting yourself, at least if your best friend, a coworker, a counselor. I'm not sure I care who it is, but letting go and start small. I would say start small is really important. I did not open up to my counselor for 6 months. 6 months about my childhood abuse. I came to her and I said, I don't like myself. I'm a perfectionist and a workaholic, and I hate myself. She was like, hey. She was like, give me an example of how you hate yourself. And so I did. And she said, okay. She said, I'm going to keep it real simple for you. The next time you go down that rabbit hole in your mind, can you set a timer? And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, I'm going to give this to you. And it was this little tiny timer that was a frog, probably good for kids, but I still have this timer because I want you to set it for 10 minutes. And she's like, and I'm going to allow you to go down that rabbit hole for 10 minutes and beat yourself up and talk bad about yourself. But when that timer goes, when the frog chirps, you got to bring it. You got to say, you got to say at least 5 things that you do like about yourself.
That's good.
Promise not to go down that hole. And it was, I needed something more immediate, in the future. So I got a rubber band, and she goes, every time you think something, I want you to pop yourself. She was like, I want you to pop yourself and physically have that pain acknowledge what you just did, put action to it, put a word to it. And it started that small with me. So it doesn't mean you have to sit down with your best friend and tell them your life story and everything that's wrong with you. It could be, I feel really inadequate here. I'm having a hard time walking out of the house without my makeup on. It just starts small. You have to start somewhere. You owe it to yourself to love yourself. You do. And you got those small little increments are very important.
I love what you said. You have to learn to love yourself. Yeah. And wouldn't you say that, ladies, is probably the most difficult thing to do post-trauma? To truly love yourself.
True self-love is creating an environment that you can live in. And an environment, I mean mental health, work, everything.
Yeah.
Self-love only means that you create that environment where you can be in.
Where you can thrive. Yeah. I really appreciate your candor, your vulnerability today. For those people who are listening, and I know you and I both want to give people hope. What are you seeing? You're immersed in this world. What hope do you see for the future for people who are experiencing this right now, or just finally acknowledging that their trauma is impacting them? What hopes do you have for the future?
I have big hopes for the future. Yeah. I think that society is different now. You know, I grew up in a world that we didn't even talk about getting your period. Nevertheless, talking about what may or may not be happening to your body. We didn't talk about anything. And I think that's changing. I think the movement of prevention education, teaching kids consent, teaching kids that their bodies are their own, that their privates are private, just those concepts alone. If, I'm proud of our prevention programs that we have at the care center. They are groundbreaking. There's only one of four. We're one of four childhood programs in the whole United States. And if I do say so myself, we're really, really good. But we're getting in front of kids as young as 3, and we're teaching them that their bodies are their own, that no one can touch them, that their privates are private, and that if someone asks them to keep a secret, they have to tell their trusted adult. And if that programming would have been in my preschool classes, I may have realized at 5 years old that stuff wasn't supposed to be happening to me. And would I have had the courage to tell somebody, hold on a second, this is happening to me right now? Well, I didn't have that option. Today we do. Today we have programming. People can lean into resources. People can pick up the phone and call their CAC and say, I'm struggling. I don't want to talk to you about it, but I know I need help. And they can start the conversation. We didn't have that in the past. The future is more hopeful because we're not living in a cloud anymore. We're not putting our heads in the sand. And I know some families still do. And there's generational trauma, there's generational abuse, and it happens throughout their family. But it takes one bold, brave step. Just one. Just one to change the cycle.
I love it.
And that hope does exist.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time. I know stay here because I may have questions for you in the rubber meets the road. Enormous wisdom and vulnerability. And I obviously took things from it myself. But Jada, we did it again. We got some facts and figures. And by the way, I know Jada has said this on a couple of we pick these facts and figures before the interview. But Jada, tell us some science behind what we were talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you actually already brought up the book, The Body Keeps the Score, but I'm going to bring it full circle back around because my first statistic really is about how the body remembers and trauma gets stored physically in your body. The key study that Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, I hope I pronounced that right, found in his groundbreaking book, The Body Keeps the Score, explains how trauma rewires the brain's fear center, so your amygdala, and alters the stress response system, keeping people stuck in survival mode. And really what his study says is traumatic experiences, especially in childhood, don't just live in our memories. They're stored in our body. The nervous system becomes hypervigilant, and it leads to long-term stress and emotional dysregulation. So that was the first one. The second one.
Feel that one. Yep.
Stacy brought up the ACE score. Again, we pick these statistics before we talk to our guests. So I love how on point they always are. But adverse childhood experiences, or ACE score in the brain, the science there says that high ACE scores impact brain development, particularly areas involved in emotional regulation, learning, and decision making. A key study research from the Harvard Center on the developing child shows that toxic stress caused by early trauma disrupts the prefrontal cortex, your decision making, and the hippocampus, your memory, and amygdala, your emotional response. So long-term impacts can include chronic anxiety, difficult handling stress, and a heightened fight or flight response. The third statistics I had today was on trauma and how it influences decision-making and your self-perception. The science here says past trauma can lead to unconscious patterns of behavior, including self-sabotage, perfectionism, as we talked about earlier, shocker, or avoidance. These patterns often stem from unresolved pain and need to protect oneself. And a key study here was from a 2011 study in trauma, violence, and abuse, found that childhood trauma influences how adults perceive themselves and others, often leading to limiting beliefs such as I'm not good enough or I don't deserve success. The last one is the healing power of connection and rewriting your narrative. The science here says that connection, support, and intentional reframing of your story can rewire the brain and reduce the grip of trauma. Key study in Frontiers in Psychology from 2021 found that strong supportive relationships and therapy help regulate the nervous system, fostering emotional healing And narratively, the work like Dr. Dan McAdams' life story model shows that reframing painful experiences into a narrative of growth can build resilience and hope. So
Yes.
I hope that wasn't too many statistics, but I love how
Nope.
they just really supported what we just talked about. So Athena, I'll kick it back over to you for Rubber Meets the Road. And you can tell our audience how to, or guess what to go, where to go from here. What do we do now?
Well, first of all, what I know those stats seemed like a lot. I would listen to them again, because if you have gone through trauma, you're going to identify with some of those. They're good articles to read. But most importantly, I want to pull back out something Stacy said. We need to be aware, right? So the very first Rubber Meets the Road is acknowledge your story. And if you are not ready to share it yet to a person, share it to yourself. So my very first Rubber Meets the Road is sit down and allow yourself to journal and take 15 minutes, take an hour, whatever it takes for you, and ask yourself some questions. What really happened to me? How did it shape me? What was my childhood like? What did impact the decisions I'm making? What were some of the lessons I learned, the strengths that I got? What are some of the things that I don't love that I learned from it? Ask yourself these questions and allow yourself to tell yourself your story, so that when you go to that person, like Stacy said, and you start to share something, you don't have to share the whole page, but share something, but know it for yourself. Very important. Start with you. Awareness in every aspect of your life is critical. Number 2, identify patterns. Start looking at patterns of behavior. If you have had any level of trauma, you know what we're talking about. And by the way, even people with 0 ACE scores, still, you need to check your patterns. Can I just tell you that, right? Check your patterns. But you'll start to see them. And what I want you to look through is reflect, what habits or behaviors do I consistently doing? And where is that being tied to my past, right? And I'll give you an example. I'll give a personal example. A pattern of behavior for me is self-sabotage. I will literally get to a point and then I will make the negative truth come true to prove the negativity from the childhood. And I had to and I would consistently self-sabotage, which is interesting because if you look at my life, I'm excessively successful, but I'm telling you, self-sabotage. And I could see myself doing it over and over again. And that's the self-sabotage is what sent me to therapy, because the self-sabotage, honestly, in my 20s the next step was suicide. And I knew it. And so I went in and I said, I'm going to do the ultimate self-sabotage if I don't get help. And so start recognizing the patterns and then ask yourself, what's causing it? And I will say this, when you recognize them, this is where you're going to know most of these you're not going to break on your own. Yes, there is science to say if you take one pattern at a time that it could work. I am going to tell you, if you have low trauma in your life, you can take that approach. Take one pattern and change it. If you have the other things affecting you, go get help. You're going to need a support system to help you break those patterns and understand deeper why. Okay, that's Athena's little side note there. Next one, build safety in your body. What does that mean, right? I will tell you, if you look at the science, what Jada said to us, it's most of us who have gone through trauma, we don't regulate emotions well. We're in fight or flight. And one of the best things I'm going to ask you to do is when your emotions flare, stop for a second and breathe. Take a deep breath. There's a lot of breath therapy work that you can look at. I do the box often. Ground your feet. Take a scan of yourself. One thing I do that is the most impactful to me is when I am overwhelmed emotionally, I stop and I pray. I just stop and I pray. And I get my brain to calm down. So whatever that is, but just take 5 minutes and build safety in your body and allow your body to breathe. And so you can stop the chaos for just even a minute and be aware. Start looking at what is creating that. What are the triggers that are causing my body to go into this emotional panic? Really, that's what it is. And then lastly here, you guys, speak your truth with somebody you trust. Stacy, you said this, right? Find that person that you trust and go to them and be careful. Be careful. This is not what this is you do not want to be re-traumatized. So pick the person well. Start small, like Stacy said, and start to share with them. And Stacy, I love that you said this. And again, you didn't know my rubber meets the road, which I love is fun. But you have to understand you don't and cannot do this alone. You have to have somebody standing with you, being authentic with you, being real with you, loving you, listening to you. You're going to need that. You're going to need that person in your life. And so be on the lookout. And if you're a spiritual person, pray for that person. Pray for that person. God, ask God to reveal that person to you. I have been fortunate. If I look back on my entire life, as I'm thinking about writing, Jada, a book about my life, if I've been pulling pictures, of my life, more than ever, I can look back and see where God put one person at a time right where they were. So I want you to know it doesn't take a lot of people. So if you're listening to this and you know somebody who has gone through a lot of trauma, you can be that one person. You can be that person. And one person can change a life that then has a trajectory to change everyone around them. I want you to think about that. So if you are a person who has gone through trauma, understand it just takes one person. You just need one person. And if you haven't, and you know people, you can be that one person. And so I want you to really think that and be on the lookout. Be on the lookout how we can help each other and support each other get through all of this so we can be who we're meant to be, right? Not the fake whatever, but the real authentic us. So Jada, where do we go from here? This was a fun one. Emotional.
This was a fun one. And honestly, it was one that, I was just super excited about and excited to hear more about the Care Center. And so I guess, where do we go from here? I'll make sure that we link the Care Center's website. Yeah. And then I will also provide Stacy's direct email if you have questions or if you need a resource in Oklahoma City, she's happy to connect you. But yes. I'll make sure that that's all in the show notes. And then as well as The Body Keeps the Score, I'll make sure that book is in the show notes as well, because it is a research heavy book, but it is really good and would definitely recommend you all reading it. So other than that, if you enjoyed this podcast, we would love for you to like and subscribe so you can join us next week. You can find us just about anywhere. So if you just want to find Athena on other socials or other listening platforms, just Google Athena Captain. She's a pretty unique name, so it's kind of easy to find her. But as far as where else we want to leave you all with something serious, and that is that this is not your practice life. So do not wait for it to be perfect. Start messy, start scared, just start, because nothing changes until you do. So take one step today toward the life you want and dare to share it with us. We'll be here standing with you every step of the way. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.